Number 5. Unscheduled stops. In this episode, Thomas makes unscheduled stops which causes delays. This one, in my opinion, is the best episode of Season 21 because not only they brought back Bulgy at the very end, but my favorite part was the montage where Sir Topham Hatt spies on Thomas at his passenger train. Oh, and I also found it hilarious that a random pig steals Sir Topham Hatt's hat. And if you remember my top 10 Thomas villains video, I mentioned that Colin McFarlane does a great job voicing Bulgy. I think it suits him perfectly. This episode also marks the first time Birdie's driver spoke since Birdie's chase in Season 2. And I also like the fact that Bulgy mentioned that he was a vegetable bus at one point. And in my opinion, Bulgy looks better in red than he does in green, so therefore, this episode deserves a pass. Number 4. Slow Steven. When it comes to Season 19 and Steven episodes in general, this is my most favorite one of them all because it shows that Steven is not just a slow engine, but can also be a true hero to his friends and passengers. My favorite scene had to be the Sora suspension bridge collapsing during the climax, which is a reference to calling all engines. Heck, I also got a little scared when Steven got stuck in the middle of the bridge trying to warn Gordon about the danger. But luckily, no one was hurt, especially Steven, who finally pushed himself over the bump on the track. After Steven's act of heroism, Sir Topham Hatt decided to repair the damaged bridge and had to warn the other engines like Gordon to slow down during its construction. Oh, and you gotta love the bit where Steven calls out to Gordon, "Come on, Gordon! Rockets coming through!" Yeah, I thought it was a very satisfying quote. Overall, as stated before, this episode just shows that even the slowest characters can be the greatest heroes, and because of Steven's heroism, he attracted more visitors and became more popular than ever. And that's why I consider it the best episode of Season 19. Number 3. Henry's Hero. In this episode, Henry and Hero accidentally took on bad coal and had to put up with it because they needed to take the train to Brenner docks because the ship leaves at 4. When it comes to Season 17, this is the absolute best one because not only Duck returned in this season, but I love the chemistry between Henry and Hero because they're both old, wise, and determined freight engines. I even love the episode's message that you should never give up no matter what. And that also reminds me of a railway series story that was never televised, which was Super Rescue. Let's talk about Hero for a minute. I love this character because not only he's old and wise like Henry, but he doesn't call out on his friends for being lazy. He uses his words of wisdom to help them out. You could even say that this is my most favorite episode regarding the character. In the end, Henry and Hero deliver the train to the docks just in time, and Sir Topham Hatt congratulates them both. And after that, they were fixed at the steamworks and were given fresh new coal. In conclusion, Henry's Hero is the best episode of Season 17, and if you're a big fan of Super Rescue from the Railway series, then I highly recommend this one to you. Number 2. Duck and the Slip Coaches. When it comes to Duck episodes, this is the absolute best one by a long shot. In this story, Duck tells his friends about the slip coaches on the Great Western Railway and how they work. But when James tells Sir Topham Hatt all about them, he lied to him that it was his idea and not Duck's. Thankfully, James gets his comeuppance when Duck tells Sir Topham Hatt all about it and lets Duck take the slip coaches instead. What I love about these slip coaches is that not only how they operate and that they prevent any more delays, but I also love the fact that they have painted faces instead of the standard gray ones like we see with most characters. Not to mention that their voices were perfect. They also remind me of the auto coaches from the Railway series in terms of their origins and liveries. Another thing I love about this episode is its message that credit is the most important thing, as well as honesty. And that way, people will know who created a project such as music, animation, and voice roles. And as a content creator myself, it's always important for me to credit people so that I can thank them for helping me with a project. Otherwise, they'll get mad at me for it. Oh, and I should always ask my viewers to remind me to credit someone in the description in case if it was their idea for a video. And sometimes I do forget to do that. Duck and the Slip Coaches is an overall great episode, and it's the best one of Season 18. Though I do feel bad for Emily when her spot was taken away at Timma's Sheds. So therefore, I give this one a 9.5 out of 10 stars. Now before I get to my number 1 pick, here are a bunch of honorable mentions. Toad's Adventure. As much as I enjoyed this episode, but it got beat out by Toad's bright idea because Toad already had an adventure and busy going backwards back in Season 5. Not Now, Charlie. I think this is a slight improvement over Ho-Ho Snowman in terms of writing and character growth. Oh, and remember the time I said that Billy and Charlie were cousins? Well, they're actually brothers, but with different placed domes. Sorry for the misinformation on that earlier. No steam without coal. It would have been number 23 because I couldn't think of reasons to put this episode on here. Duncan the Humbug. It got beat out by Duncan and the Grumpy Passenger because the Christmas Carol trope has been done to death already. PA problems. As much as I love this episode, but the new PA system's screeching problems really gets on my nerves. Also, why couldn't Sir Topham Hatt just turn it off and back on again as the station master suggested? The missing breakdown train. Even though I like this episode, but I think Judy and Jerome said it best.
Boring!
And the number one spot is a tie of 3 between Tit for Tat, Mike's Whistle, and Useful Railway. I don't know about you guys, but I think season 20 is the very best season of the Andrew Brenner era. And it's not just with return appearances of Skiff, Ryan, Glenn, and the Breakdown Train, but also these 3 episodes. The reasons these are number 1 as a tie of 3 is because they were originally written by the Reverend Wilbur Awdry himself and were adapted to television by Andrew Brenner. Let's first talk about Tit for Tat. This stars Bert, not to be confused with Iron Bert, and it's about his revenge on one of the clergymen who sprayed him with mud. But it turns out it was just an accident, and Bert learns that 2 wrongs don't make a right. Next up is Mike's Whistle. This one is about Mike and how he hates pulling passengers. During the episode, Mike was so cross with a cow blocking the line that he blew his whistle long and loud until it flew off and disappeared. And as a result, his passengers had to whistle and cheer for him. And finally, we have Useful Railway, which stars Rex. In this story, Rex thought pulling wool trains is easy until he crashes into some one day. Back when this episode first aired, the slow motion crash scene was used as a meme. I once made my own meme of it called Rex's Sacrifice, which I mixed it with Sora's sacrifice music from Kingdom Hearts 1. What these 3 episodes have in common besides being originated from the Railway series is that the drivers and firemen had more dialogue here than they did in most episodes in the Andrew Brenner era, which is a good thing because they're the ones who drive the engines and are the voices of reason. Not to mention that they haven't spoken that much in both the Renaissance and the Big World Big Adventures eras. I wish they would speak that often. Overall, I highly recommend watching these 3 episodes if you haven't yet. It just makes me wish they adapted more episodes from the Railway series into full CGI. But I'm afraid that's not going to happen anymore because of the stupid reboot that I ranted on earlier this year. Now, before I go, I just want to thank Percy Engine Productions 061 for correcting my mistakes, including those in my top 5 pack episodes video. Oh, and that reminds me, I'm planning to make a further thoughts on the pack video sometime in the future, because there are some things I haven't really covered yet, as well as a couple of mishaps here and there. And I would also like to thank James and Sailor Jupiter Fan 2001 for inviting me to the toy training exhibit in Wichita, Kansas. He's also a Thomas and Sailor Moon fan. I suggest you go check out his channel if you haven't yet. Now tell me in the comments section on which of these episodes are your favorite. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? And even though I enjoyed most of the episodes in seasons 17 through 21, but unfortunately I can't fit them all here, otherwise the video itself would be way too long. So if your favorite episode isn't on here, then I deeply apologize for not including it. After this, I'm going to do a few follow-up videos from previous topics because there are some things I need to get out of the way. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.